Welcome to Teach the Geek interviews. My name is Neil Thompson. I am the founder of Teach the Geek. It's an online platform for STEM professionals. The first offering of the platform is a public speaking course called Teach the Geek to Speak. To learn more about the course, please go to teachthegeek.com. Again, that's teachthegeek.com. Today, my guest is Anthony Fasano. He is a civil engineer, a professional engineer, and the founder of the Engineering Management Institute. It's a company focused on helping engineers become effective leaders through content and corporate training. The website contains free articles, 2 podcasts, and a YouTube series, Engineering Career TV. Welcome to Teach the Geek interviews, Anthony.
Thanks for having me, Neil. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you got it. So first question, where did your interest in science and engineering come from?
When I was in high school, I really liked math and science, and my parents kept telling me, if you like those 2 things, you should think about engineering. And so luckily for me, a fellow classmate in high school's father had a small civil engineering firm, and I guess my parents knew his parents, and one thing led to the next, and I was able to get an internship there, and that's how I kind of got into engineering.
Oh, okay. So are you saying that if your friend's father had a different type of engineering firm, you would have went into that instead?
It's possible. I mean, my parents were kind of like, oh, we think one of your friends, his father's an engineer. I'm going to try to get in touch with him. And that's what happened.
Interesting. So, eventually you go on to, I'm guessing, to study civil engineering, and you end up working, and then you end up becoming a professional engineer. So why did you become a professional engineer, and what was the process to become one?
Well, so personally, I believe that it's very important to have an engineering license if you're an engineer. I think it gives you credibility. I think it shows that you're staying up to speed on your technical knowledge. And the process for it, it's not that easy, to be honest with you. I mean, you have to take a couple of long exams for about 8 hours each. You take one pretty much when you graduate from college, and then you can take the second one. In most states, you have to get approximately 4 years of experience, and then you take the second part of the exam, although that varies by state a little bit. But that's the process that I went through, and I did it pretty much right by the book. As soon as I had enough experience, I took the second part, and I got my license, I think, when I was like 23 or 24 years old, pretty young.
Okay. So what has the benefits of having this professional engineer license been for you?
Well, the benefits in my career as an engineer was definitely helpful with promotion, salary, like I say, credibility. Clients look at you as now you have a license. There's responsibility that comes along with it, because now you're potentially also legally liable for things that you work on with your license. And then in terms of my coaching and training career, it's also been valuable because firms hire the Engineering Management Institute because they know that I focus on building our training programs, understanding how a professional engineer works and the mindset and the perspective. So I think it's been valuable to me both as an engineer and doing training for engineers.
Interesting. Well, I can attest to the difficulty of both those exams because I took them myself. I actually didn't have any interest in doing it. I don't even know where I got the idea to take the FE exam, but I had no clue how anyway, I ended up taking it, and I studied for a while for it, and I passed it. And I live here in California, so just like you mentioned, every state has their kind of requirements. I guess California isn't as stringent in the 4 years experience as other states are. So I was able to take that exam. I didn't have to wait 4 years to take it. And that was a tough exam. I remember going into that exam, and it's open book, so you bring in all the your stuff. People were bringing in whole libraries of books.
Oh yeah.
Into that exam, I remember thinking, man, you're going to be able to access all of those books during this exam is almost, I guess, overkill. I guess.
Yeah, they know that. The exam designers know that you could bring all the books in the world, but you don't have the time to look in all those books. So you really need to prepare, be focused. We have some good articles on our website on this, but really have one or two good reference manuals that you use, and use those on the exam. That's really the best way to do it. I use Michael Lindeberg's reference manual. He's the president of PPI. They're a big sponsor of our content. they've got great stuff. But really, you just want to focus on a couple of resources on the exam and know them inside and out. And that's going to help you to save a lot of time, because really you're up against time.
Right. Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I worked in medical devices as a product development engineer. So I realized that for civil engineers, the PE license is pretty prominent and important to have in terms of, getting those promotions like you mentioned. But if you're working in medical devices, hardly anybody, I don't think I've ever met anybody really that had their PE license. But I guess I kind of did it because of the kind of challenge of it. And, as you said, it's kind of impressive to have. People, when they find out I have it, they're pretty impressed, I think.
Yeah, I think it's not only that, but I think also that even if you're in a field that people don't typically get their license, you don't know what's going to happen in your career. So if something changes, a company changes, somebody gets, unfortunately laid off or something like that happens, you still have this powerful credential that you can use maybe to reinvent yourself or to go into a slightly different engineering field. So I think if anybody has the ability to get that license, you should take that opportunity, because you never know when you're going to use it.
Yeah, for sure. And I think every other year we have to pay the fee to kind of keep the license, and I definitely pay it because I know the time and effort and money it took to get that damn license. So I definitely keep it up.
Right.
So at some point then, so now you're working and you're an employee somewhere. I'm guessing you're getting paid every other week. You got your 401k. Life is good. But at some point you decide to work for yourself and form this Engineering Management Institute. What motivated you to go off on your own?
Well, I had discovered as an engineer that the very successful engineers were the engineers that had the ability they had other skills beyond technical skills. They could communicate effectively. They knew how to network and build relationships. They were very productive. They were good leaders. And so I developed those skill sets, and my career really took off fast. And when that happened, my company at the time asked me if I would go around to the other offices in the company and present on these skill sets for the other engineers in the firm. Mm-hmm. And when I did that, I really liked it a lot. And so I decided that at night I would go to coaching school and speaking school. When I say coaching, I mean executive coaching school and speaking school. And then I convinced the company to allow me to implement a coaching program within the company that went very well. And it got to the point where I just said, you know what? If there's hundreds of engineers in our firm alone that needs this help, there must be thousands of engineers out there that need this help. And so I decided that I'm going to go out on my own and try to help these thousands and thousands of engineers. And that's ultimately what I did and started the company.
Yeah, I fully agree with you. Even from my own personal experience, when I started working, actually it was my second job. I was a project lead, and when I took the job, I didn't know I was going to be a project lead. I thought I was just going to be a product development engineer. But then I took this job, and they gave me this project and told me every month I had to present in front of the executives, and I sucked at it at first. It was horrible. I'd sweat through my shirt. I'd stumble over my words. It was embarrassing, and I figured I needed to get better at this, or I might not have this job much longer. So I definitely I get where you're coming from, and speaking in front of people, especially speaking in front of people that don't have the same, I guess, expertise as you, and being able to explain things so that people can understand. All of that is so important, and I can see why your career kind of took off after you improved those type of skills. So when I first came across your website was called Engineering Career Coach, but now it's called the Engineering Management Institute. What motivated you to make that change?
Yeah, so that was a big change for us because we've been the engineering career coach for a while. I went to coaching school. I'm passionate about coaching. We have a coach. I have a coach that works with me in the institute. The challenge that we had with the name of the company being the Engineering Career Coach is two things. One of them is that a lot of people see a need for coaching when you have a problem only. Mm-hmm. And that's completely false. Michael Jordan will tell you that he wouldn't have won 6 rings unless he had a really good coach, right? Everyone needs a coach, even if you're great at what you do. Mm-hmm. So that was causing a problem because I think people didn't really want to come to us for our services because they kind of felt like they were admitting they had a problem. Secondly, we really want to do corporate training. I like working with organizations. I like being able to affect many engineers at once. I like going in and helping organizations get better. And, again, the engineering career coach name sounds very individualistic,
Right.
whereas a company per se wouldn't hire the engineering career coach, but a company might bring on the Engineering Management Institute to incorporate programs into their firm. So it was a strategic decision. It was also, I think, a decision. I mean, at the end of the day, our mission is to help engineers become more effective managers and leaders. And I think that this name gives us a better opportunity to do that.
Yeah, I think you're right. And not only that, but when you go into a corporation, as opposed to just focusing on one person, you're able to, you maximize your time a little better because you're able to help more people at once as opposed to just helping one person at a time.
Exactly. And really, I mean, with the goal that I have, which is to help millions of engineers, I'm not going to be able to do anything with one person at a time. I'm not going to be able to get anywhere near that goal.
Yeah, for sure, because there's only one of you after all, right?
That's right.
So a company comes across the Engineering Management Institute. They go through the website. They're thinking, I think I'm going to hire these people. What can they expect to get?
Well, they're going to get, I'm really passionate about training that works. And what I mean by that is you can go to webinars today online. You can buy webinars. You can do different things. But I've studied learning quite a bit. And what I've learned about learning is that if you go to a webinar or you go to a one-day conference, the odds of you bringing that information back and transferring to the job are very low because you're just busy and engineers are busy and they got a lot of projects going on. So what we try to do at the Engineering Management Institute is we create programs that make it easier for you to transfer the information back to the job. So for example, one of our popular programs is called the Engineering Management Accelerator Online Workshop. Companies enroll a team of engineers into the program. Over a 5-week period, they go through skill building courses, but also the company gives them a real management challenge or problem, and they have to come up with a solution over the 5 weeks, and then they have to present it back to their company. So by doing that, we're forcing them to use some of the skill sets they're learning. We're forcing them to think like managers. And we're forcing them to create a real solution that their company will actually use. In a couple of cases, I've already talked to CEOs that have used the solution. So they can expect to get training, management and leadership training that sticks, that works, and that transfers back to the job because that's what we focus on doing.
Okay, that's interesting. So the company, they hire the institute, and then they send their, is it just the engineers that you train, or do you train anybody in the company that wants to train?
Anybody, our programs are built really for anyone in engineering companies. We've had companies enroll surveyors, geologists, scientists, even admin and accounting people can go through our programs. They're geared towards engineers, but they're really geared towards anyone working with engineers as well.
Interesting. So I just out of curiosity, how are they geared towards engineers specifically? Is it, I think you mentioned the accelerator, they're given like an engineering problem to then have to present to people? Is that the way it's geared towards engineers specifically?
Well, really the way it's geared towards engineers is the way that we present the skill building courses, because I know like as an engineer, the way you communicate with people, how you might have client interactions, it's not these things aren't the same across all industries per se.
Right.
And so from my own background as a PE and my experience, I really build the course to be able to speak their language, so to speak. And like a perfect example is I talked to a company recently and they said that they hired someone to come in and do communication training.
Mm-hmm.
And he got there and he gave us a presentation and basically all the engineers in the room said, we can't use these tactics. They'll never work in our industry.
Okay. Right.
So, you have to understand what people are dealing with and what they're going through on a day-to-day basis to try to make it as effective as possible.
For sure. And I think that would be the way you would differentiate yourself from that person that company brought in. I mean, I'm guessing they didn't have the background in engineering, because if they did, they would have, I'm sure, tailored their presentation more towards engineers. I mean, there's a lot of places out there that do, presentation training, that kind of thing, but they're coming from it more from a non-engineer type background. And from what, my experience in working with engineers as an engineer myself, you're right. We are a little different. We're more, I guess, analytical and logical in our thinking. We're not the most, I guess, I don't know, flamboyant of presenters, like that kind of thing.
Breed, yeah.
We're different. Yeah, we're a different breed. So if you're hearing, how to present from somebody who's been in your shoes, it's a lot more. You're going to listen to them more than somebody that hasn't been in those shoes.
Agreed. Yeah, 100%.
So I mentioned in the intro that you have a couple podcasts and you have a YouTube channel, but I didn't mention that you've written a book and that you've given a TED Talk too. What can you talk a bit about the book and the TED Talk that you gave?
Sure. So the book, when I left my engineering job and I decided to start coaching, training, inspiring engineers, I was sick one day in my office, and it was the winter, bad cold, and I just kind of, for some reason, it just hit me. I had been doing the presentation called Engineer Your Own Success with a lot of success in different places. People like the topics, and it just kind of hit me that if I want to reach more engineers, I should put this into a book. And I went online that day. I signed up for a course, How to Write a Book. I wrote the book in about 30 days because I had given the presentation so much. I knew what I had to say. It was just all in my head. I wrote the book. I decided to self-publish it because I wanted to get it out there quickly. Mm-hmm. I sold a lot of copies driving across the country to over 30 states. And then the book was picked up by Wiley Press, and we now published a new edition. And it's done very well. But really, it all goes back to my goal, which is to inspire a lot of engineers. Mm-hmm. And so that led me to writing the book to try to reach more engineers. And then when Wiley came around, the decision was they can probably help me reach more engineers. So I went with them. So a lot of the decisions I make are focused on trying to reach more engineers because I believe in our content, I believe in our training, and I want to try to get it into the hands of as many engineers as possible. In regard to the TEDx talk I did a TEDx talk here in Bergen County, and it's something I wanted to do for a while. I love TED Talks, and I thought there was kind of an opportunity to do a talk about inspiring the next generation of engineers because with crumbling infrastructure and a lot of the lack of clean water in a lot of parts of the world, I mean, there's many reasons that we need a lot of good engineers. And I felt like that was a message that I would like to share on that platform. And so the TEDx talk was focused on inspiring the next generation of engineers.
That's a really great topic, especially, I think I read somewhere that the majority of graduate students in engineering programs in this country aren't even from this country. They're all foreign born. They're all foreign. A lot of them are foreign born, and so a lot of these jobs that require these high tech skills, the companies are having difficulty finding American born people to take on those jobs. And I know that this is kind of an issue for some people in this country. And so if you have people that are inspired, that people from here that are inspired to go into those fields, I see that only as a good thing.
Yeah, and I think a lot of American children don't necessarily get exposed to engineering or understand the power of engineering and the need for engineering. I think ASCE has done a really good job with the Dream Big initiative that they've put out there. It was in movie theaters. You can send it to different schools, which I think is great. But we need to continue to do more stuff like that.
For sure. So you do corporate trainings, and then you've also given a TED Talk. So you're really good at presenting in front of people. What are the top tips that you have for effective verbal communication?
Well, I think one of the top tips that's always been a challenge for me that I've worked on a lot is really the pace, is trying to slow yourself down, because, we tend to speed up when we get nervous or when we're on stage. And then if you speed up, people can't get the message in. It doesn't come off clearly to them. So even though it feels awkward, the slower you talk, the easier it is for people to take in the message and really, become powerful to them. So that's one thing that I would recommend highly, is to really think about your pace. That's very important. The other thing is, eye contact. I think keeping eye contact with your audience is very important, whether it's in a conversation in a boardroom presentation or whether it's in front of 100 people, right? I mean, people get distracted today in a lot of ways. So you need to maintain that engagement with people, which I think is really important and is unfortunately pretty challenging. And I think the other thing that I can tell you just overall about speaking that I like to do is I like to try to ask myself before a talk, what do I want people to do when they leave the room? Or what do I want people to do when this webinar is finished? And like I said before, I'm all about like people taking action and transferring what they learned back to their job, back to their life. And if you can't make it easy for them to do that, then they're not going to do it. They're not going to remember the training, and you're not really going to effectively help people.
For sure. Just based on your last point, I think it's spot on. Just figuring out what the call to action of your speech is and what you want people to do afterwards is really important. When you give speeches, in addition to thinking about what this call to action is, do you have a process for coming up with your speeches, and if you do, what is it?
Yeah. So my process is, I start by thinking about the endpoint, what do I want them to take away with. Then I start with like usually a brainstorming process. So I'll, take a piece of paper, maybe write down a bunch of ideas that I want to have in the talk. And then I might move to the next step, which might be like taking some sticky notes and putting them on sticky notes and moving them around in the order that I want it to flow.
Right.
And then from that point, what I'll do is I'll take that and I'll work with someone on our team here who helps me with all my presentations, and she knows how I like the slides and stuff. And then she'll put together the first run of the slide deck for me. And then I'll work with her from there to get it finalized and then work on, what my thoughts for each slide. So it's a pretty involved process. And then if I have a presentation that I've already done that I want to reuse, because I think it's the same topic, I can reuse it, but I always usually go through it again, see if it needs to be refreshed and repracticed.
Yeah, that sounds like a pretty good process, and it sounds pretty logical. But I mean, you're an engineer, so I wouldn't expect anything different, right?
That's right.
So, is there anything else you want the people listening in to know about what you and your institute is doing?
Well, I mean, we're at engineeringmanagementinstitute.org. You can check out our programs. I'm really passionate about the programs, including our accelerator course. But really what I would say to you is that if you're interested in improving yourself, becoming a better manager, a better leader, focus on good learning opportunities that are relevant to your skill sets and the specific skill sets that you want to improve on. So if you want to work on your people skills, then, you need to focus on maybe read a Dale Carnegie book or whatever the case may be, but then also implement it. So if you're going to do something, figure out a way to implement it, whether it's a new habit, whether it's doing something every day, because that's what's going to make you get better. And, if I tell you to go read a book, number one, you're probably not going to have time to read a book. If you are the kind of person who actually will read the book, you probably will find it very, very difficult to actually tactically implement things from the book. So you have to kind of do the whole process. And if you don't do the whole process, it's kind of pointless to do any one component of it.
Yeah, I fully agree with you. I mean, I have a bunch of books here, and I'm sure especially when you read books, as you mentioned, it's difficult, or maybe you're not even motivated to then just take what you read in the book and implement it. But if you go through some kind of training like offered at your institute, it's a lot easier to do. I would assume.
Yeah, we try to make it easier. That's our goal. Make it easier for people to implement these new skills.
Out of curiosity, you mentioned that the company provides training for managers and leaders. Do you delineate the difference between managers and leaders, or do you see them as the same?
Well, I think that what happens in the world of engineering is you climb this so-called ladder and you eventually be called a manager. But that doesn't mean you're a leader. Okay. However, the best managers become effective leaders. Right. So, in my opinion, I think the word manager is more of a title. I use it in a lot of our programs because in engineers lingo, it's very common. Mm-hmm. Project manager, department manager, division manager. But I don't think that every manager is a leader or is a good leader. So I guess the reason I use both when I talk about it is because I'm trying to help people to manage better and become more effective leaders, but I don't think that they're the same thing exactly. But I think someone can be both.
Well, I would assume you would hope that somebody would be both. As you mentioned, the best managers are leaders. I mean, I definitely have had managers that they couldn't lead for shit, and it showed. It was horrible.
Well, I think the challenge is that you often, as an engineer, get thrust into management. Right. But you don't know what management is or how to manage. So those young managers are not leaders. It's not their fault. They need the training. And that's why a lot of our programs, we do train like these younger, newer managers to help them become leaders, because they're not, but it's not their fault. Then you have other managers that have managed for a very long time and they're not leaders because they never really cared about it or focused on building their leadership skills. And we can help them as well. But that's why there are people that typically are managers by title, but not yet leaders because they haven't learned how to be.
One other question that I had is, these companies, they bring you in to do, or you bring your company in to do corporate trainings. Are the people that are in the trainings, are they there because the company tells them they have to be, or are they there, on their own will?
Both. In our programs,
Right.
individuals can register.
Okay.
So somebody that's just motivated, that found our website, they can sign up for like our individual track. And then there's companies that enroll teams. But I would say for the most part that even the people that are enrolled by their companies, the kind of training that we give, people are excited to get this training because, like I said, it's rare for engineers. They see it as their company really investing in them and their future.
Right.
And so there are a lot of times they're very engaged in it and they're interested in it and they like the content. So.
Excellent. I was just curious because, I'm sure it's pretty demotivating to try to present to people that don't want to be there and kind of being forced by their company to be there. And they're just kind of sitting there and just looking at their watch, wondering when lunchtime is.
Right.
Well, this has all been great to hear about the Institute and what you're doing, Anthony. Thanks for being on the channel.
Oh, well, thanks for having me, Neil. I appreciate it. I always love to kind of talk about helping engineers become better managers and leaders.
Great. My name again is Neil Thompson. I am the founder of Teach the Geek. It's an online platform for STEM professionals. The first offering of the platform is a course called Teach the Geek to Speak. To learn more about the course and the platform, please go to teachthegeek.com. Again, that is teachthegeek.com. Until next time, please take care.